Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. Couple days late with getting this video to you, and I deeply apologize. Some craziness getting the new sound system in, and some other stuff, and so a couple days late. Today is Saturday, March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day for all of you Irish people. Anyway, today is day 28 of our study. And hope that you are just diving in, continuing to read, continuing to pray, continuing just to seek God. And before I get turn things over to Mark here, I just got a couple of things I want to run through with you. I'm just going to use a little dry erase board here so that we can get some dates down. First of all, I want to talk to you about this upcoming Friday. So that's going to be the 23rd of March. 23rd of March. The important thing, that is a Friday night worship time, and what we are going to do, you and I, is we're all going to gather there, and I hope everybody comes who's been doing a part of this study, and we're going to have a prayer night. We're going to add some worship in it too, but we're going to have a prayer night, and we're going to circle some important stuff that's going on in your life and in our lives and in the life of the community. We got some really cool stuff. Justin and Lindy and I have been brainstorming, got some creative ideas, and it's going to be a lot of fun, all right? So that is the 23rd. That's Friday the 23rd. Then I want to make sure that you understand the 27th, which is the following Tuesday. That is our Passover meal. My friends, you cannot understand Easter. You cannot celebrate Easter without the Passover story. So I want to encourage you, make sure to get your tickets. Now, on the 27th, that's at 6 o'clock, not 6:30. It's at 6 o'clock. Why? Because we do the full meal. We do everything, all right? So that is buy your tickets and everything. Assigned seating, very, very important night. Please, please, please be there, all right? Then I'm going to say the 28th. And this is also going to be at 6 o'clock, just so we don't confuse anybody. Now, this night is extremely important. It's Wednesday, that 28th, and the whole purpose of that night is to come to understand all that Jesus went through on the cross. So we're going to be talking about the whole crucifixion. It's a powerful night. If you've ever been there, guys, it is a powerful night. Do not miss that. You can't understand Easter without the crucifixion, all right? So it is extremely important. So we got our prayer night, then we got worship, and then we've got our crucifixion reflection or reflections of the cross, however you want to call it. And then check this out. So then Thursday the 29th, Friday the 30th, and Saturday the 3rd. Come on, Todd. 31st. That looks like a couple of dollar signs. Let me fix that. 31st. Waypoints is closed. So no Friday service on the 30th. No small groups, no nothing. It is closed for 3 days. Why? Because Jesus is in the tomb. All right? So Jesus has the Last Supper with the disciples. Then he gets nailed to the cross. Then he's in the tomb for 3 days, which means then on April 1st, and because it's the 1st, we're going to do it at 11 o'clock. How many ones can we get in there? 3 of them, all right? 11 o'clock, Sunday, April 1st, we are going to gather and we're going to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so, my friends, I want to encourage you. This is how you understand Easter. This is how you celebrate Holy Week, by making sure all of these. So don't come to church just once. All right, don't do it just once. You need to be there 4 times. All right, guys, I want to encourage you. Please, please, please. Easter will be as special as you make it. So, my friends, let's continue to circle and to pray, seek God together. So, here's Mark.
On July 4, 1776, 56 founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, and Constitution Gardens memorializes those signers. Most of their names are forgotten 2 centuries later, but the ripple effect of what they did is the reason we enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In much the same way, I believe that many of the blessings we enjoy are because of someone else's prayers. Spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers who have gone before us. I think one of the greatest moments in eternity will be when God the Father gathers his children, pulls back the curtain of time, and connects the dots between our prayers and his answers. Those dotted lines will cross nations and generations. It'll be a celebration of God's sovereignty, but I also think we'll have an opportunity to thank those whose prayers have directly and indirectly impacted our lives. Over the past few weeks, we've been dreaming big, praying hard, and thinking long. We've been circling people and problems and promises. As we end this series, we're just getting started. The goal wasn't circling for 40 days. The goal was to still be praying on day 41. Here's the good news. There's no expiration date on prayer. Our prayers don't dissipate over time. They accumulate. They compound interest. Every prayer you pray ripples all the way into eternity. That's the power of a single prayer. That's the legacy we leave the next generation. Keep circling. In 1983, Lauren Whitehead published an article in the American Journal of Physics titled Domino Chain Reaction. You can picture it in your mind, can't you? You knock one over and it sets off a chain reaction that can knock down hundreds of dominoes in a matter of seconds. But the unique significance of Whitehead's research was discovering that a domino is capable of knocking over a domino that's 1.5 times its size. So a 2-inch domino can topple a 3-inch domino. A 3-inch domino can knock over a 4.5-inch domino. And by the time you get to the 18th domino, you could knock over the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Of course, it's leaning, so that's not entirely fair. The 23rd domino could knock over the Eiffel Tower, and by the time you get to the 28th domino, you could take down the Empire State Building. In the realm of mathematics, there are 2 types of progression, linear and exponential. Linear progression is 2 plus 2 equals 4. Exponential progression is compound doubling. 4 times 4 equals 16. If you take 30 linear steps, you're 90 feet from where you started. But if you take 30 exponential steps, you circled the earth 26 times. Here's my point. Prayer is not linear. Prayer is exponential. Why? Because God is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. Every prayer we pray has a chain reaction. And those chain reactions set off 1,000 chain reactions we aren't even aware of. The cumulative effect won't be revealed until we reach the other side of the space-time continuum. It takes very little effort to push over a tiny domino. You can do it with your pinky finger. But by the time you reach the 13th domino, the gravitational potential energy is 2 billion times greater than the energy it took to knock over that first domino. My point? Well, some of us want to start with the Leaning Tower of Pisa or the Eiffel Tower or the Empire State Building. Good luck with that. Your 2-inch domino might seem insignificant, but extrapolated across space and time, it can make all the difference in the world. If you do little things like they're big things, God will do big things like they're little things. Since writing The Circle Maker and Draw the Circle, I think some of the most inspiring stories I've heard have come from those who just won't give up on God. They keep circling the promise. I think of Paul Anderson, who circled Baptist Hospital in Oklahoma City like it was Jericho. He prayed 350 circles around that hospital until his son, Marquise, got a kidney. I think of Josh Gagnon, who pastors Next Level Church, one of the fastest growing churches in the Northeast. He hopped in a car with several staff members and drove for 5 days, a 2,000-mile prayer circle around 6 New England states. They're now one church with 7 campuses in 4 states. And then there's a 63-year-old trucker who set out on a 14,500-mile prayer walk all the way around the perimeter of America. We've already talked about dreaming big, praying hard, and thinking long. Let me wrap up this study with an exhortation. Prayer is the difference between letting things happen and making things happen. Prayer, I believe, turns ordinary people into prophets who shape the destiny of their families, their churches, their communities, and even their country. Parents are Exhibit A. I wrote a little book after the Circle Maker called Praying Circles Around Your Children. And I share in that book that my most frequently circled promise is Luke 2:52. I prayed that promise thousands of times for my 3 children. May you grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with man. I believe God is going to answer those prayers, but not just for my children. I believe those prayers are for the 3rd and 4th generation. There'll be a ripple effect in our family. The bottom line is this: you'll never be a perfect parent, but you can be a praying parent. And prayer turns parents into prophets who shape the destiny of the next generation. In Joshua 4, the people of Israel have crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Of course, it started with the priests stepping into the river. Then and only then does God part the river. And then 12 leaders are chosen to take 12 stones and set them up in a place called Gilgal. Joshua says, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt." It took 1 day to get Israel out of Egypt, but it took 40 years to get Egypt out of Israel. Gilgal is the place where God rolls away their reproach. It's where they spent their first night in the Promised Land, and it's the place where God tells them to build an altar to the Lord with these 12 stones. The question is, why? And the answer is to serve as a sign to the next generation. It says, in the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. We think right here, right now. But again, God is thinking nations and generations. We think that what God does for us is for us. And it is, but it isn't. It's also for the next generation. Here's the problem. We tend to forget what we should remember and remember what we should forget. That's why next to my Bible, nothing is more sacred to me than my journal. It's a dream journal, it's a gratitude journal, and it's a prayer journal. That's where I write down what I'm praying for, what I'm believing for. I believe in it so much that we even created the Circle Maker prayer journal. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, "Take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ." That starts with writing it down. Why? Because the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. I tend to forget what I pray for, and because of that, I fail to give God the glory when He answers my prayer. But because I've kept a journal, I can go back and see things I've prayed for. One of my prayer heroes is George Mueller. Along with pastoring one church for 66 years, he established Ashley Down Orphanage. Mueller cared for 10,024 orphans while establishing 117 schools for their education throughout England. In today's dollars, George Mueller raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 million. That's an amazing feat, but what makes it even more amazing is that he never asked anyone for a penny. He felt compelled to only ask God when he had a need. He trusted that God knew exactly what he needed, so he turned every need into a prayer. When he needed a pipe fixed, he prayed for a plumber. When he needed food or money or books, he prayed that God would provide. It's estimated that more than 30,000 specific prayers were answered. How do we know this? Because he wrote them down in his prayer journal, and the ripple effect of those prayers is impossible to tabulate or calculate. That is the power of prayer. Let me bring it a little bit closer to home. When I wrote my first book, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, I recruited a prayer team, and we prayed that God would put my books in the right hands at the right time. To me, a book sold is not a book sold. It's a prayer answered. And God has answered those prayers in some remarkable ways. A few years ago, a man named Peter was reading In a Pit on a flight to Las Vegas. During the first leg of that flight, he felt challenged and convicted by one sentence. God is in the business of strategically positioning us in the right place at the right time, but it's up to us to see and seize those opportunities that are all around us all the time. Well, Peter switched planes in Phoenix, sat down in his new seat assignment, but he felt like it was a divine assignment. He said hello to the girl next to him, but it was one of those situations where she shut him down pretty abruptly. Like, thanks for saying hi, but I don't want to talk again, and the armrest is mine. Well, Peter didn't want to offend her, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So he turned to her and said, I know it's absolutely none of my business, but you seem so burdened. If sharing it with a complete stranger might help, I'm all ears. Well, the 17-year-old girl sitting next to him was 3 months pregnant. She proceeded to tell him that she was running away from home. Her boyfriend told her to take off and take care of it. She had stolen her dad's credit card that morning to buy a one-way ticket to Vegas to get an abortion. She shared her story. Peter shared the gospel, and when they landed in Vegas, he convinced the girl to call her parents who were worried sick. Her parents convinced her to grab the next flight and come home. Now, I don't know what's happened since that day, but I know that there's a ripple effect of that one divine appointment because it saved a life and it changed a family tree. Don't underestimate the power of a single prayer and the ripple effect it can have through all eternity. By the way, Peter said, that's what happened after chapter 1. Can't wait to see what happens after chapter 2. In Acts chapter 10, there's a story about an Italian soldier named Cornelius who lived in a place called Caesarea. Now, we don't know much about him, but we do know that he prayed regularly. And here's what I've discovered. When you pray to God regularly, irregular things happen on a regular basis. We don't know when or where Cornelius prayed, whether it was morning or evening. I don't know if he knelt and prayed or paced and prayed. I don't know if he folded his hands or closed his eyes. And I don't know if he prayed NIV or KJV. But he prayed regularly to God. And God gave him a vision. He took a step of faith by sending some of his men to Joppa, where Peter was praying on a rooftop. God sets up this remarkable divine appointment where Peter goes back and shares the gospel with Cornelius, and Cornelius becomes the first Gentile convert. But I would suggest that God didn't just answer that prayer one time with a divine appointment between Peter and Cornelius. I think he's answered that prayer billions of times, and he answered it one more time the moment you put your faith in Christ. It's the ripple effect of one prayer prayed thousands of years ago. At the end of this study, let me make a confession. I think someday we'll thank God as much for the prayers he didn't answer as the ones he did. Why? Because we asked for the wrong thing, because we're not omniscient. A no from God is as gracious as a yes. That said, I want to challenge you to keep circling. I believe our greatest legacy is prayer. It's the gift that keeps on giving long after we're long gone. We may forget, God remembers. And God doesn't just remember, he answers in his time, in his way, for his glory. Dream big, pray hard, and think long. Draw the circle.